For a lot of new leaders stepping into that leadership role for the first time, they are hit with a wake-up call that some myths they believed coming into what leadership was is actually something quite different. Today's episode, we're going to dive into the 5 common leadership myths, what you need to be aware of, and how you can avoid falling into the trap that many new leaders fall into. Good morning, competitors. Jake here, your Chief Encouragement Officer. Welcome to this brand new episode of the Compete Everyday podcast. It is Monday. We are kicking off a brand new week. And as this is going live, I am currently en route to Omaha, Nebraska, and then Lincoln, Nebraska, where I have the opportunity to spend the next couple of days with some of my favorite people on leadership training. We have a competitive leadership program that we've used with organizations and associations over the course of 3 or 6 months, developing leaders, right? Because what happens? We get used to being a great performer. We're a great individual contributor, right? We crush it in our role, and then we get an opportunity to be promoted into management. And we make that jump without realizing it's an entirely different skill set required to excel at management than it is as an individual contributor, right? All of a sudden, our success is not dependent on what we do, but on what our teams do. And this transition period is really tough for a lot of people, especially when you factor in that most organizations struggle to adequately train and equip new managers on how to manage and lead, right? We make the promotion and say, good luck, you'll figure it out. As my friend Tyler Dickerhoof would say, was we throw people into the deep end. Some sink, some figure out to swim, but they don't know how they learn to swim. And so when the time comes to train someone else on how to swim, they don't know. They just say, well, I didn't drown. You'll figure it out. Kick, scream, flail, whatever the case may be. If you don't figure it out, it's not for you. And we create these cycles within our organizations that are toxic. We know from an HR standpoint, the cost of replacing leaders and managers is anywhere from 20 to 40% of their salary. From a purely financial standpoint, that's a big chunk, but then you factor in the additional workload and stress that's placed on everyone else from not only having to pick up the extra workload from being short a person, but then the damage it does to the culture of always cycling through the leader. You're not going to be here long. It's kind of like a child who parent is always going through dating situations, right? Every other week, it's a new person, a new love. And the kid finally gets to a point where they don't take time to even get to know the person because what's the point? They're not going to be here next week anyways. So we start to create these cycles. And a lot of those challenges, right, come from an organizational standpoint, but they also come from a new leader standpoint. Because a new leader will step into these roles and have these assumptions or these preconceived ideas of what leadership is, what it's supposed to look like, and then realize life is very different. Things are very different. And so what I want to do today is peel back the curtain, as we might say, on 5 myths that I see common with leaders, things that come up in discussions in our trainings, things that I see posted online, and hopefully dispel some of these myths. So you have a better idea of what you're getting into, right? Or for those of you in management and leadership, you have a better idea of what's to come and maybe feeling that your situation is not unique, right? You sometimes can look around and think, well, I'm struggling in leadership and what I'm going through is unique to me and nobody else is doing it because from what I see on the outside or on social media, it doesn't look like anybody else is struggling the way I am. But you're not alone. You're in this and there's a lot of people going through the same stages you are. So let's talk about it. Before I do, I want to encourage you, hey, if you're serious about your leadership skills, if you want to grow as a leader, you want to make a bigger impact in the workplace and throughout your career, I want to encourage you to head over to lead.competeeveryday.com and you can sign up for the Leaders Film Room. It's my once a week email, goes out on Tuesdays, quick leadership lessons, some actionable takeaways, but it's designed every week to kind of get you in that mode of what am I doing to make relational deposits? What am I doing to increase my influence and make a bigger impact? What am I doing to better manage how I manage myself and my time so I can set the example for my team? So it's free, it's easy. All you got to do is head to lead.competeeveryday.com, get signed up, and you'll join that leader film room. Now, let's talk myths. Let's talk the common myths that new leaders in the trenches, well, I would say fall for, right? They would fall for. The first one is probably the most common. And this is the idea that leaders have all the answers. We, for some reason, make assumptions about the person we report to or our boss's boss having all the answers. Part of that may be because of what we perceive them to be, how we perceive them to handle it. Part of it could be, well, they're older than us, so they have more years of experience. They've got it all figured out, and I don't have it figured out. But as I shared with a group of leaders last week in Florida in the manufacturing and certification industry, is that sometimes the most powerful thing a leader can say is, I don't know. Because you don't actually have to have all the answers. The mentality for a leader should be to learn, to be as knowledgeable as possible. But if there's instances you don't know, it's not to fib and hem and haw and kind of work your way through to lying. It's, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. See, that phrase right there opens up the door to a little bit of vulnerability. You give your team at that same point permission to not have all the answers, but you also hold them accountable to finding those answers, finding the right person, finding the solution out. And so we don't have to have all the answers. In fact, the best leaders often create an environment where others can thrive without dictating every move, without having to know every single thing. We give people that space, but we have to be okay not knowing the answers, because otherwise what's going to happen? We're going to be making assumptions that every other leader has all the answers. We don't. So internally, our inner voice will start to be negative on us because it knows we don't have all the answers. We can't lie to that person in the mirror. And so the first myth, the one I see oftentimes, is they believe leaders have to have all the answers, and guess what? You don't. I don't know could be a powerful phrase that opens the door to better relationships, better connection, and better trust with your team. The second myth that I often see is leaders believe that once I have the title, I'll have the authority. That once I get promoted into this role, I'm naturally going to have the authority. Everybody's going to respect me, listen to me, do it. Like now they don't, but once I'm in that role, without a doubt. The reality is you earn that authority and respect by how you show up, by the example you set every day, and by the deposits you make in every relationship. Yeah, just because you have the title, you're higher up on the org chart. They, quote, should listen to you. But the workplace has changed. The way people work have changed. People want to work for people they respect, they like, they're influenced by, right? And so for us, in order to build and gain that authority, we have to make the deposits in people. We have to model the behavior and how we show up every day. What's our attitude when we're stressed? How do we respond when a team member makes a mistake? What's the attitude we walk in the door with every day? All of these things are ways we can start to earn that authority and respect from the people that will follow us, that report to us. The third myth I often see is this idea that, man, leadership, to be a great leader, you got to be liked by everyone. To be a great leader, you've got to be liked by everyone. And whoo, that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I love this quote by Georgia head football coach Kirby Smart. He says, leadership is having to make hard decisions that will negatively affect people you care about. You have to be willing to be disliked despite your best attempt to do the best for most. To be misunderstood and not always have the opportunity to defend yourself. That's leadership. I read recently in Erwin McManus's book, Mind Shift, around their decision of moving their church in California down into Hollywood. And the conversation he was having with his wife about 3 families that they would lose by making this move from a distance and location standpoint. 3 families that had supported them over the years, that were a crucial part of the organization and the church body. And what Erwin told his wife, and he said it was hard, but he said, I have to do the best thing for the thousands of families that attend our church, not just the 3. See, leadership is about making difficult decisions, and you're not going to be liked by everyone. One of the common phrases is, if you want to be liked by everyone, be vanilla ice cream. But even yet, I bet as I say that, some of y'all do not like vanilla ice cream. Leadership is not a popularity contest. It's about being respected and creating positive influence in others. And so once you get over this idea that not everyone's going to like you from a leadership standpoint, people are going to disagree with your choices. People are not going to like the decisions you make or where you're trying to go. But you don't need to be liked by everyone to be a great and impactful leader. So let's recap, right? Myth number one, leaders have to have all the answers. We know that's not the case. Myth number two, once I get the job title, I'll have the authority. No, we create the authority and the influence by the relational deposits we make in the example we set every day. Number three, the myth, I need to be liked by everyone. Absolutely not. To be a great leader, you're not going to be liked by people. And if you struggle with this, if this is an area where you're like, I'm a people pleaser, I just got to be liked, I want to encourage you to read the book, The Courage to Be Disliked. It's a great read, The Courage to Be Disliked. Number four on our list of top 5 myths. Number 4, the myth that good leaders do it all by themselves, right? This one is natural if you are a high performer. If you are an individual contributor, if you crushed your job before and now you're transitioning into leadership and you think, man, it's more job, more responsibility, more things, I got to do it all. Take a step back and think about what a leader does, right? A leader influences and creates change in others, which means we should be delegating, which means we should be empowering others. A great leader delegates. They don't do everything by themselves. They actually equip and develop their teams to do a lot of the work. It doesn't mean you don't do work. It just means you as a leader do different work. Your team executes on a lot of fronts. So the myth that you have to know it all and do it all, right? Number 1 and 4 tying together is actually myths that'll stop a lot of leaders. And it's one that a lot of leaders who are incredible individual performers struggle with during the transition because they had to do it all as an individual contributor. Now they think they have to do it all and then some. When the idea and the role of delegation actually sets you up for success. Finally, as we start to bring this thing home, right? What is the 5th and final myth of leadership that I see most often? It's the idea that if I work hard enough, people will follow. If I work hard enough, if I set the example that I'm going to outwork everybody, people are naturally going to follow. Here's the reality. Hard work matters. You have to work hard as a leader. But to create influence, you got to have connection. See, hard work is kind of the foundation. It's the base. You have to have hard work, right? You have to set the example. But if you're not making connections in your team, if you're not connecting with the people you're trying to lead and influence, it doesn't matter how hard you work because they're going to see it and have no emotional attachment, connection, or draw to you. You have to invest in those people, right? It's leadership and great leadership is who has a clear vision of where they're trying to go, where we're trying to go. Who's invested in the relationships with those people, right? Who's encouraging them, holding them accountable, and who also works hard, right? You can't have the connection and the lack of work ethic. You can't have the clear vision and lack of work ethic. You have to, hard work is the prerequisite to being a great leader, but it's meaningless in terms of influence if you haven't built the connection with your team. And so let's step back and look at this, right? The 5 myths of leadership is about having all the answers. It's about once you get the title, you get the authority. It's about needing to be liked by everyone. That great leaders do it all by themselves and that if you work hard enough, people will follow. I understand where the myths come from. I understand where these misconceptions come from. But as we've talked about today, sometimes we can let those myths sink hold and we let them become a limiting belief in our life. That the work ethic one, right? If I just keep working harder, the team will eventually buy into me. What are you doing to make deposits? What are you doing to have a cup of coffee? What are you doing to invest time in better getting to know them and follow up and asking them about it? See, once you've stepped into leadership and maybe you listening to this, you've been in it for a little while, you start to realize the gap between what you thought you were getting into and what you actually got into, right? It's kind of like when I ran my first half marathon. What I thought I was getting myself into was very different than what happened on the race course. But the only way we grow and develop is to understand where that gap is, right? Between what we thought and what actually is. Identify what are we doing to bridge that gap and improve as a leader, and then just consistently learning and growing. You can beat yourself up for where you're not, or you can put your energies and efforts into where you want to go, but you can't do both. And so as we kind of kick off this brand new week, what I want to challenge you with is one of these myths that maybe hits home closer than the other one. Maybe it's the idea that you keep thinking, if I'm only liked by everyone, I'll be more impactful. What if we take some steps this week to put it aside? Maybe it's picking up a copy of That Courage to Be Disliked. Maybe it's evaluating decisions you've made this year that you tried to appease everyone instead of doing what's best for everyone. Wherever that is, this journey along the way is not a simple one. It's not always an easy one, but it's a meaningful one. And it's one where you have the opportunity to pour into others, to make deposits, to truly impact other people's careers and their lives, to change trajectories, which at the end of the day is what really matters. Now that we've dispelled what some of these myths are, we can focus on doing the work to become a great leader, which I know you're already doing. Go win your day today, leader. You know I'm cheering for you.